Hi, I'm Lara Wallace. Welcome back to the Bass Capital Radio podcast. I am very excited about our guest today. This is Thomas Rehberg, and he is a real estate agent out of St. Augustine.
Yep.
And I happened upon one of your videos. You have a channel called Living in St. Augustine.
hmm
I'm going to give you a minute to plug that for a second. Give us a little information about how that got started.
Yeah,
So go for it.
for sure. Well, hey, thank you for having me on.
Yeah,
When you gave me the call, I was like shocked. I'm like, oh, this is cool.
yeah.
Like I'd love to be able to do this, and I love what you guys are doing for like the city of Palatka. Just like what you've shown me here today, it's awesome. But yeah, I run the Living in St. Augustine channel. I'm a real estate agent in St. Johns County in St. Augustine, so a neighboring county here
hmm
of Putnam and Palatka. And yeah, the whole goal of that channel is just to give out information for people that want to buy, sell, or invest. Right? I'm a real estate agent; it's part of my job,
Right.
and I don't like how real estate agents are salespeople.
hmm
Right? I I don't want to sell anyone on anything. There's not a magic word I can say that makes you want to buy a house. Right?
Right.
It's ultimately a decision that you need to make,
hmm
and I'm just here to help you along with that. So I just take the advisor route on things and put out as much free information regarding the city of St. Augustine, the surrounding counties, which is kind of how we got connected,
Exactly.
and what to look for when you are going to be making one of these huge financial decisions. So that's the pretty much the whole basis of the channel. Cover the news, the market stats, all the things that I think you would need to know about if you're living here or if you're looking to move here.
I think that's a fantastic resource. I know personally, if I need to know about anything, I'm going to Google.
Yeah,
Google gets me to YouTube. I can find whatever I need on there. So I was doing exactly that. Just curious about as we started our podcast, which has highlighted quite a bit of Palatka, and we're now branching out to all of Putnam County. We've
hmm
talked to a young lady yesterday who's working in Crescent City, but we kind of want to bring information. Though I will tell you now, I'm not a real estate agent.
yeah,
I admire all those stats that you know. I learned a lot actually watching your channel. But how I found you was actually my husband did looking up Palatka, Florida. On YouTube
hmm
and on Google and videos about, and so a video popped up. Is it, essentially what is it versus St. Augustine versus Palatka? What is it like to live in Palatka?
yeah,
We'll be sure to link that video because I was blown away. There are other videos on YouTube about Palatka that I will say, not that their objective, their perception in that video wasn't valid.
hmm
However, they only highlighted the negative things about Palatka,
yeah.
which happens a lot. Yeah.
Well, and listen, there are negative things about Palatka,
hmm
right? There's negative things about St. Augustine,
Right.
but and that's one thing that I try to do on my channel, and what I did with the video about Palatka is I'm giving you both sides.
Exactly.
I'm not just giving you like, oh, hey, living here is amazing, it's the best thing ever, you're gonna love your life. There are things, right? And
hmm
there's things everywhere, right, of that are negatives of living in that area.
Right.
If I don't tell you about that, I'm not doing my job, in my opinion,
hmm
And just to give a quick note, like we bought a house or we bought a townhome right off of 95 and 16,
hmm
and we didn't know that there was a gun range within a mile of our townhome. So
Surprise.
I lived here as a kid. I grew up here. I would say I went to elementary and middle school in St. Augustine,
Right.
and I moved around a lot, right? So even before I moved here, I moved around a lot. But I'm originally from New York, so we moved from Brooklyn, New York, me and my wife, back down here in 2019, and we heard more gunshots than we ever did in Brooklyn, which we heard zero in
Oh
Brooklyn.
my
So
goodness.
it's like every day, because it's the Fraternal Order of Police right down the street. They're
Ah,
grandfathered in at that location. They can shoot at whatever time. 2 a.m. shooting guns, 10 in the morning shooting guns, 9 p.m. whatever time they're allowed to.
that's
And
stressful.
who you gonna call?
Right.
You're gonna call the police on the police,
Right.
So it's like, to me, that's like part of my job is informing what's going on in the general area. But like, yeah, you're buying a house, but you're also buying the neighborhood, and you're buying the city, and
Exactly.
you're buying everything going on there.
Yep.
So
Exactly.
I think that's what I try to do with Palatka is that, right. I just gave it a fair and honest assessment, right. There are some problems, but there's a lot of great things about living here,
Yeah.
and from the real estate side, you could talk about the average price, but
hmm
aside from that, like if you're outdoorsy, this is like a prime location to
You're
live,
not lying.
like there's so
Absolutely.
much that this area has to offer, plus the city of Palatka. I mean, just seeing it over these past couple years from when I remember as a kid, completely different,
Did you
well,
drive through here as a kid or
I,
visit
as a
or?
kid, but like you have different glasses out. I had a friend that lived here that went to the YMCA on St. Augustine
Oh,
Beach.
okay.
So we came down here and just visited him twice,
Hmm.
and as in the difference is it's not very much different, but now it's the change of what's going on down
Right.
here. There seems to be a little bit of a spark in Palatka, and that has to do with what's going on with the surrounding counties too.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, so just to give some context, your sister, the video is about a little over a year old. So at
Mhm.
the time, your sister had just purchased a house with riverfront. I think you said 100, with 100 foot or
I
100.
think it's 100 feet of riverfront.
Yeah.
Yeah, if I remember correctly.
And your best friend lives here. You helped to move here about a year before that. So 2 years before that. So we're
Yeah,
looking.
yeah. So my sister and her husband, my brother-in-law,
Hmm.
they both have lived in northeastern Florida for the majority of their lives.
Hmm.
Her husband grew up in west side of Jacksonville, and they both have really great jobs. My sister's a physician's assistant. My brother-in-law owns an escape room in St. Augustine, and
Oh,
is
that's awesome.
oh, it's amazing too. I'm gonna plug it. Escape You.
Oh,
It
we actually went there. Sorry to derail. I'll do
really,
that a few times in this, just
yeah.
so you know. But yeah, we had an event that we booked the Escape You, and you're not wrong.
Yeah,
10/10 to your brother-in-law. He's killing it.
I will. Yeah, I will. He'll be. We're actually supposed to grab lunch after this, but yeah, I'll tell him because they put a lot of work into it, and they themed the rooms to be like St. Augustine.
Yeah,
So,
no, it's a great, great
from my
place.
experience, now I've gone to escape rooms only with them,
Hmm.
and they take a lot of the fun out of it because they know all the games and how everything's set up,
Yeah. Oh,
So
I didn't even think about that.
yeah, I'm over there like a dunce in the corner, just trying to figure things out. I'm like, what about this? And they're like, get out of here. But yeah. So, and he's also a nurse as well. So
Oh, wow.
they he was doing traveling nursing. My sister had a job in Jacksonville, and they were doing well. And they're like, hey, you know what? We just had a baby. It's time for us to settle down, right? And they were looking in St. Augustine, and they were looking for more land, right?
Hmm.
And they wanted more elbow room, which in St. Augustine is not a thing anymore.
No,
Everything,
no.
especially they bought a home, I think around, it was 450, if I remember correctly.
Hmm.
If you're looking at a 450 home here versus St. Johns County, it's completely different. In St. Johns County, a 450 home might be a 40-foot wide home site, new construction, that is 125 feet deep, right? Like
Mm,
they're sitting on an acre on the water in Palatka,
right,
for 450, and they have a 1,500 square foot home that was pretty much like move-in ready,
right.
right? So just what you got here versus there is really what pulled them over here, and they
Hmm.
were just looking for a different lifestyle altogether. They were tired of Jacksonville and what's going on there. St. Johns County, I mean, it's changed so rapidly,
Hmm.
over these past couple
Yeah,
years. It's
yeah.
completely different than when I was a kid, and there's good and bad with that. I mostly think it is good,
Hmm.
but of course, there's a lot of bad with that. Like, part of the reason I think Palatka
Traffic.
traffic for sure. Part of the reason I think Palaka's going to start popping off even more is because of like my generation and where are they going to live? Where are they going? If they're working downtown, and majority of St. Johns County is hospitality industry,
Right.
you're having a hard time affording a place to rent, let alone buy,
Yeah.
right? So, and I think it's the growing pains of like Jacksonville is now becoming like a notoriable metropolitan area,
Hmm.
right? Pretty much every other metropolitan area in the country, people commute to work, and an hour is about normal, Whereas
Pass.
here, if it exactly like here over 20 minutes, you're like, I'm
That's
not.
a trip.
That's a trip.
Yeah.
You're not
Growing
going.
up, I lived in South Putnam, and like it it's silly thinking about it, but like we're going to town. Like
Yeah.
going to town was anything over 20 minutes. If you have to come over the bridge, which you
Hmm.
came over to get here today, like we did not go over the bridge except for once a week, which was a trip to town. I drive 3 minutes to work and I get annoyed coming over the bridge.
Yeah,
So yeah.
exactly. And I think and Placo will probably experience this in the future too. But I mean, it's just growing pains of like our area and what happens when now it's all happened so quickly. We're squeezing it down in the past 5 years essentially. But
Right.
I just think that's kind of normal, and for everywhere else in the country where you have a major metro and you have other suburban areas around it, you commute an hour to work. I have a
Right.
friend that, this is New York City, completely different, total opposite, but he commuted 4 hours every single day going to and from work, and that was normal. So
Mm-mm. That's
now
a job in itself. Like
that
that's a part-time gig, getting
yeah,
to work.
and that, and then people wonder why remote work became so big, right?
Mm.
It's like, well, you get 2 hours of your life back every day, and you
Yeah.
realize how things can be.
Yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, I don't even know how we got on that
No, that's
subject,
okay.
but yeah.
So in St. Augustine, tell me how long you've lived there.
So I've lived there the majority of my life. I moved there when I was 7, and then I moved away when I was 13. Then I came back when I was like 25, and then, but I've also moved around a whole bunch of different other places. Probably not staying anywhere else for like 3 years. And we've been back full time since 2019. So,
You just like to move or military or
no, my parents got divorced when I was a kid. Just series of getting like moving to a new place, getting evicted, new boyfriend, whatever that is. Not for myself,
life?
for my mom. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, just life happening, and
So
then
this is more as a child moving around versus as a
for sure,
yeah, okay,
yeah.
okay. Now I'm
So
tracking.
yeah, it was more or less like just my stability was here in St. Augustine. So like
Right.
I grew up on St. Augustine Beach, right across the YMCA on Pope Road. And that's where we lived the whole time I was here. My mom ended up passing away when I was 13. So then I went to a boarding school. So if you ever had Hershey chocolate,
Mhm.
Milton Hershey created a school for orphan boys, and that's the school I went to. So it was completely
Oh.
free. I went there for high school, and they give you a scholarship to college. So then I went to Penn State, and after that, then bounced around from Pennsylvania to New York, and then to Florida.
And
So
met your wife somewhere along the way?
yeah, I met my wife. A high school friend that he was from New York. He went back to New York, and I go up and visit him every once in a while. And then I met my wife at a bar, and that's all she wrote.
That's a classic love story
Yeah,
right
and
there.
you know what? It's classic New York love story too, because she's Puerto Rican and I'm Irish, so it's like
Oh my goodness.
that's like
That's a
right.
spicy household
Yeah,
there.
exactly. Our cultures are very similar. But yeah, so it's that that's all she wrote pretty much. And then we moved down here in 2019. We were just kind of tired of the city and what the city offers you. I mean, you spend 500,000 there and you might get this room. Like
Wow.
it's pretty crazy where your money goes there. Um, so we moved down here, bought a townhome, and yeah, I got my real estate license. I've had my real estate license prior to that. I practiced in New York and in Pennsylvania, but I got my real estate license March 2020, and then the world
That
changed.
yeah, I was
Yeah.
gonna say you came in a very interesting time there.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, so looking at well, let's talk about the market differences. So, you mentioned a moment ago, and now the difference between what 500,000 get you there versus 500,000 here.
Mhm.
Um, you know, do you in real estate see people coming to St. Augustine? Do you see a lot more traffic in or out? And what are people looking for in the market comparatively?
Yeah, I think the largest demographic. So there's two demographics really moving to northeastern Florida. Let's say not
Okay.
just St. Augustine, but just Jacksonville. The surrounding 5 counties, and that's going to be the baby boomer generation. So these people have already been vacationing here for years.
Right.
And they've been doing it for so long. Did it with their families, and they're retiring.
Mhm.
So they're taking their money and they're living out their
The
life.
retirement Florida dream.
Yeah, 100%, and we've all heard it,
Right.
for it's a tale as old as time, where Florida was a retirement state.
Mhm.
But now, Florida's economy is I think it's, like, in the top 15 out of the world, right? So,
I've heard
like
the statistics similar to that recently, yeah.
yeah, so, like, we beat out major countries for our economy here, and we're, like I think we got rated the number 1 economy last year in terms of the whole United States. So, and there's a lot of factors that go into that, and Jacksonville and how Jacksonville's changed. The location of it being in the northeastern part, you have I-10, which goes all the way to California. It's people
That's a
don't
crazy thought.
people don't think about
Really?
that,
Yeah.
right? But you also have 95 and I-10 right there. So they've redone all the ports in Jacksonville to be able to take a larger container ship from China.
Mhm.
So a lot of the stuff that's getting imported used to just go to Miami,
Mhm.
right? But now it's starting to go into Jacksonville. Now
Right.
cruise ships are leaving out of Jacksonville. So there's just a lot of stuff that's changing with our area. And then we also, all the major schools that we have here um, provides a really high educated workforce,
Mhm.
for any employer that's
Right.
here in northeastern Florida. So then you have the millennial generation that's moving here, and they're typically either going to be working at one of those companies that are moving to our area, or they're working remote.
Right.
So the demographic, I think it's like 50% of the people moving to Florida make over $150,000 a year.
Wow.
So the reasons they're moving to our area, I mean, there's tons of them, right? But I'd say that the main reason they're doing it is because they want it's either going to be a job or it's going to be lifestyle.
Right.
It's one of those two things. And if you're retiring, it's more about
I
lifestyle,
was
right?
gonna
If you're a
say,
millennial, it's about the jobs.
yeah,
So, and then the lifestyle is just a bonus,
yeah.
right? And that's, either way you look at it, people, especially if you're from this area, and this is something I battle with all the time with a lot of my friends from childhood, is talking about the cost of living here and how expensive housing is. And it's like, well, if you've only lived here, you don't understand what it's like to live outside another major metropolitan area.
Hmm.
You compare Jacksonville to any other metro in Florida, it's still the cheapest metro,
Okay.
even though
Yeah, I have not lived anywhere outside of Florida, so I've really
yeah.
enjoyed hearing this.
Yeah, so well, I mean, you just look at it versus Tampa or Miami or Orlando, Jacksonville's still cheaper, right?
Okay.
And that's something that, in my opinion, I think geographically speaking, it has a better location, right? Because
Hmm.
we don't get nearly as hot as South Florida. We don't get hit
Which
with
is a crazy thought, as hot as it is.
yeah, and it's been killer these
Yes.
this past week. So like, whatever. I guess I
Yeah.
should knock on some wood. Hopefully, it doesn't get any
Yeah.
hotter.
I'll do it for you. There
Yeah,
you go.
but then you compare it to like Tampa. Like, yeah, Tampa's beautiful. The city's changed a lot, and they have a lot of jobs going in there. But man, they get hit with hurricanes all the time. The
Yeah.
West Coast
Yep.
gets hit with hurricanes, and this is knock on wood. Knock
Hmm.
on wood. We've been really lucky here in our area the past couple
If any
years.
weather things happen, it's totally
It's
Thomas's
it's
fault.
totally my fault because I keep bringing it up, but. Uh,
That's a valid point because people do think that, when we're having a dialogue about Florida,
mhm.
the weather and hurricanes are, it would be for me, like if I'm thinking about, Tornado Alley, if I was going to pick one of those states. So anyway,
Yeah.
go ahead.
Yeah, and tornadoes scare me more than hurricanes. Like
Same.
it's those are like seem
Same.
like it can happen in an instant, and then they just rip your house apart. Where it's like, okay, for the most part, hurricanes it's going to bring some high winds for sure, but for the most
Yeah.
part, it's a lot of flooding.
I'm going to,
Which get in a boat, we'll be all right.
right, exactly. I'm going to tell this story. I can't believe I'm going to tell it on here, but I was so afraid of tornadoes growing up. All I knew is hot air and cold air mixing together caused a tornado. And if you hear the train sound, like
Yeah,
it's going down. And there would be times as a child, I was afraid to turn on the hair dryer in the winter in the bathroom because if there
you
was
might have
airflow,
started it
exactly.
like the butterfly effect. Yeah,
Exactly. So in my mind, like that was a logical fear
yeah.
for a very long time.
And it's
Anyway,
funny, like the winter here is like 60 degrees. You're like,
yeah, exactly. Yep, yep. That was a very big fear of mine. So anyway,
yeah,
yeah. So the cost of living comparatively for specifically Jacksonville and those surrounding areas, I mean, I do feel like I've traveled through those areas and seen just some of the pricing differences.
yeah.
So I could see that.
Oh, for sure. I mean, and even Palatka has changed significantly over these past couple of years. Though it is much, it just got rated like top 10 cheapest places to live in Florida. I
Hmm.
think it was number one actually. But like,
I'll have to fact that. I'll have
yeah,
to fact
fact
check
check it.
that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
Google it.
But I'm pretty sure it was number one. But it's definitely in the top 10.
Right.
But if you look at like Northeast Florida, you look at St. Johns County, our prices have gone up 60% in the past 5 years.
Yeah.
Since 2019,
Yeah.
60%. And it's like just in the past year, our prices have gone up 8%.
That was
So
in your last video. I think you'd mentioned that.
yeah, and it's something the market has changed. There's no doubt
Hmm.
about it. But in my opinion, it's a good thing, right?
Yeah.
In 2021, 2022, our average days on market was like 15 days.
Hmm.
So you put a house up and it sold, and it's like you were in a multiple offer situation. If you were working with a buyer, first time home buyers were essentially just like, hey, sorry, you can't get a house
Hmm.
because you had people from the Northeast that come down with cash, or they're just 20% down, better qualified. They can go up above the appraisal value. They can pay the gap. There were just a lot of issues with that market, and now it's returning to more of a normal market,
Hmm.
right? Where a buyer and a seller can, the seller's going to sit a little bit on the sidelines. It's going to take a little bit longer to sell a home. Now it's around 40 days in St. Johns County, a little bit less, but that's a normal amount. A month to sell a home is not a bad amount of time at all.
It hasn't
Actually,
really changed too much over the last few, comparatively, it hasn't extended too far out.
no, that's not a crazy amount of time to
Right.
be on the market. Though, you talk to anyone, they're like, "Oh, I'm seeing all these price reductions and everything." It's like, yeah, well, you know what happens is everyone thinks their house is the best house on the street, and
Right.
they want to price it for X, but in reality, it's worth Y.
Right.
And you're going to have a price reduction, but in general, our average price or our median price has gone up 8% year over year. So it's like, if you think the market's crashing, it's hard for me to look at data and say that there's a potential for that at all.
It's interesting that you say that. Totally separate from watching your videos. Somebody sent a video to me this morning about a guy who says he feels like the market was going to crash.
Hmm.
But what you're saying and kind of the perspective that he had, I could see, maybe the fear factor in that. But what you're saying makes sense to me.
Yeah, and I think it's all location based, right?
Right. Location,
So
location, location.
yeah, exactly. That old realtor adage, right? If you look at like South Florida has a lot of inventory hitting the market, but it's risen so quickly in the past year, and that's in relation to what happened with interest rates,
Hmm.
right? So interest rates went from 3.5 to 7.5,
Mm,
right, within a year's time,
yeah.
and that's a gut check to anyone who is looking to buy a house. It went from like,
Yes, it is. Yeah,
yeah,
I did that. Yes, it was a gut check.
I got a 7% interest rate, so like when I got it, I'm like, this sucks, and I just did the math, and I'm like, man, this is what it could have been. Like,
There are some boomers out there though that will tell you they don't want to hear you complain because at some point they were in the teens
yeah.
for interest rate, but that still hurts when you were looking at 3.5%.
For sure, yeah, and I think that's the hardest thing is because we lived in a different world where now, of course, a lot of that 3.5% interest rate was in relation to COVID, right?
Right,
And like
right,
how they kind of needed to do something to keep people going.
right.
Um, so when you compare that 7% to 3.5%, that makes a huge difference in your payment,
Yeah,
right? So
yeah.
I think what happened is that was a gut check for people. So people, took the, um, you know, put the brakes on a little bit,
Yeah.
essentially. But now it's more or less normal, right?
Mhm.
People have kind of gotten accustomed to it. It is what it is. Do I think we're going to go back down to 3.5? Probably not ever in our lifetime, unfortunately, right?
I'm not knocking on wood. I want it to
Yeah,
go
I
down to
want it to
three and a
happen
half.
too, believe
Yeah,
me, because then I'll refinance and I'll be super
exactly.
comfortable in my payment. But just being realistic, do I think they're going to go down? Yes, I think there's a potential for them to go down within the next year or two. But a year ago, I said the exact same thing, and
Hmm.
we're still at 7%. So I think that's the hardest thing when it comes down to the market. And what's kind of seen like the slowdown is that interest rate. Otherwise, if interest rates were 5.5, our market would, it's a good thing in reality, our market
Yeah.
would still be appreciating even more than 8% year over year,
And you think it would be the same, the millennials and the boomers moving to St. Johns County?
For sure. Yeah. I mean, I think in St. Johns County, you're definitely going to have more of the baby boomer generation moving in, especially with the price points where it's at.
Mm,
I mean, if you're a first time home buyer, and this is why I think Palatka has a lot of future growth,
mhm.
when you're looking at St. Johns County, there's only really a handful of options that you're going to look at in terms of buying a home,
Sure.
right?
Single family
If you want a
dwelling.
single
Yeah.
family home, right, you can still get a condo and a townhome for an affordable price. But if you're looking at really three neighborhoods, you're looking at like St. Augustine Shores, West Augustine, which is where I bought a house, and
Mhm,
then you're looking at maybe Flagler Estates, right?
mhm.
So Flagler Estates, the real negative with that is that it's deep. Like it's 40 minutes probably from downtown St. Augustine.
Right.
So how many people are going to be willing to make that drive and live out in the country? Whereas like if you lived in Palatka, you're 40 minutes to downtown St. Augustine, but you still have a little city here. And
Exactly.
I think the cool thing with Palatka is that like you're in the beginning of what it could be, right?
Mhm,
And what you guys have done with this building, you mentioned the Heart and Soul food truck moving
mhm.
over here and opening up a restaurant, and then Azalea Brewing Company. And there's just it seems that something is starting here,
I
right?
mean, we're getting a Wawa, man. I'm
Yeah, I
like
saw that
that
too.
that
Yeah,
is like nothing to shake a stick at. We've
yeah,
got a Longhorn. From my perspective, being a resident here, my entire life, when a Taco Bell, McDonald's, and the Burger King, but now across the street from where it was, all came to East Palaka. Everybody's like, yeah, why do we have junk food? Not everybody. There were people who were like, oh,
of
why do we have
course.
trash food?
Yeah,
Can't believe that's coming in here. Listen, I get it. Like I would really love a, you know, like a crave, like you guys have over in St. Augustine,
yeah,
or a
fantastic.
fresh smoothie king or something like that. That is something that I want to see here.
Hmm.
But those places coming to East Palatka
Hmm.
are meaningful.
Hmm.
Like that means somebody sees the numbers adding up to I'm going to invest to put in a restaurant here. And now to have the Longhorn and the Wawa, there something's happening.
And just to draw a contrast, when I was a kid, they started putting all those restaurants on 312,
Hmm.
right? So they had the Longhorn there, they had Chili's, They put the Carrabba's there early 2000s, I think, if I remember
May Red
correctly.
Lobster rest in peace.
Yeah, Red Lobster is now going to be a bang, but Endless Shrimp did them in apparently.
Yeah.
And yeah, so like when I was a kid, that was like, oh, like St. Augustine's getting something. Which
Right.
like now in today's
Look
world,
what you've done.
yeah, well, in today's world now, St. Augustine has all these beautiful, great, smaller restaurants that are locally owned that are pretty much in the downtown and surrounding that area. Whereas like, hey, Longhorn's fantastic and everything. That was like the cream of the crop at that
Yeah,
point. When we
yeah.
when we got that 20 years ago in St. Augustine, we were like, whoa, this is a change,
That's us.
And that
We're
seems
yep,
to draw the parallel here is like,
right.
so my dad was in town a couple of months ago, and like just when the Longhorn opened up, and my sister and brother-in-law go there all the time,
Yeah.
like all the time. They're like every time. Like talked to him on Monday. He was going to lunch at Longhorn, and it was like, I love Longhorn.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong, but and every time we go in there, packed
Yeah.
every time.
Yeah.
So I think it's just and those people are looking at data, right? They're
Right.
not just putting a Longhorn wherever they want to.
Exactly.
There's a market for it. There's a price point for it, and there's a population for it,
Mhm.
right? So I think it's one of those things where it's like if they're doing it, why are they doing it, right? And there's a
Exactly.
good reason for
Exactly.
it.
Yeah.
And I really do believe, like, just looking, and this is what I said in my video, like I feel like Palatka feels and looks like what St. Augustine was when I was a kid.
Hmm.
Right now, St. Augustine is now this tourist place, and it's pretty much all geared towards tourism, and it's beautiful and it's amazing, great restaurants, entertainment, all that kind of stuff. But for the locals, it's really kind of it's not their game anymore. Even it just recently actually, they're talking about redoing the skyscraper in downtown St. Augustine on Cathedral.
Hmm.
It was like the original St. Augustine's first national bank. So the
Okay.
tallest building there.
Yeah.
They're talk so developer hotelier bought it in 2018,
Hmm.
and his plan is to change it into a luxury hotel and redo all those buildings that are on that corner, like
Okay.
where Casa Reina is, and then go
Yeah.
around Trade Winds.
Yeah.
So right up there to St. George Street, redo that whole thing in the Treasury Building. And the Treasury Building is what would be it's like 120 hotel, 160 rooms and 120 parking spaces, I think. So when they were talking about this at the Planning and Zoning Board, one of the Planning and Zoning Board members was like, yeah, we're not really worried about the locals here. We want people that are going to travel here and spend $1,000 a day, not the local from Nocatee that's going to come down and spend 25 bucks. He literally said that. Like it's
Oh,
quoted in the news article, and I'm like,
that's painful.
this guy's so like I can't believe he's probably getting
I
roasted,
was gonna say, I
But
wonder how long that seat will be vacant for
yeah,
or filled for. So
I don't know, but
that's
yeah,
rough. And on the corner, it's because we started talking about it, and you said trade ones, and my mind went bloop.
yeah.
The restaurant that recently closed down, the Ale Works, A1A.
A1A works,
Yeah,
yeah. It was there for like what 20 something years, yeah,
yeah.
and it just closed down.
So, I mean, that would be painful. You always want a commission that aligns and listens to their community members, and to just hear someone blatantly, we're not worried about them, you
Pretty
know.
much, yes. Like I
Uh,
did that. I have a Wednesday live. I do it every Wednesday at 8 p.m. and I cover the news stories just like that. And I was like reading it, and I'm just like, I can't believe this guy said this. Like
right,
this is kind of ridiculous, but it's the truth though. Like
right,
it's not. Downtown St. Augustine is very much like what Times Square is to New Yorkers. You don't go down there. It's for
right.
tourists. You go. You have friends in town. You might go down there, but you hate going down there,
You
right?
do have to go check out Chez L'Amour. I might have butchered that.
Yeah, I haven't been there yet, but
Oh
yeah.
man, we went this weekend, and I do appreciate because uh, maybe to swing back around as far as talking about friends.
Mhm.
Yeah, I've recently made a friend who owns a restaurant and invited us over, and we have not really had to leave the comfort of our home. And I
Mhm.
do get mad about traffic in Palatka, and I know that you guys get frustrated with it. But
Yeah.
being that close to something and being able to travel. But as a local, I couldn't imagine, I do go and patron and hang out over there, but having all that at home all the time,
Yeah.
how how that must be rough, and losing that touch that you had back then.
Yeah, I mean, it went from the hidden gem of the South to now it's the town of the South, right? So, and I don't know if Palatka will ever be the town of the South, but
Hmm.
I think it is definitely a hidden gem or a diamond in the rough or
Right.
whatever analogy you want to use. I
It used
think
to be called Gem City.
gem really.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
see. I didn't know that.
yeah.
Yeah.
So
So why is that? Do you know?
I know in the recesses of my mind, I know, and I'll have to like plug in some information right here to
Hmm.
tell you what that was. But I know that it was that for a reason, but no, I don't off the top of my head.
Yeah,
I'll get back to
we'll
you on
figure
that
it
though.
out.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I mean, we've been called a lot of things, about Bass Capital of the World.
yeah.
We've had a lot of hats that we've worn. I don't know that. I think what I like about Putnam County, and let's talk about, you mentioned the market value. The average cost of a single family home right now, based on what I just read, was about, let's say, $250,000.
Hmm.
And that seems like, now I remember around COVID, it was like 180, 190. So it is a little bit of a
Yeah,
to see that. But being able to have that ability to go to St. Augustine, and it takes me 40 minutes, 35 if I got a lead foot,
yeah,
um, but not be so over inundated with traffic. As a local, I hope that we don't get to that point. I do want to see growth, but I want to see growth in the way that, like you mentioned with St. Augustine, where you have the mom and pops eateries
yeah,
coming in, fill these vacant buildings.
yeah,
Not just Palaca, Crescent City. I don't know if you've ever spent time down there,
yeah.
but their Main Street program, they're really working on revitalization.
Hmm.
So there's a lot of hidden gems within Putnam County, not just Palaca. But I think that what makes this so special, according to those who visit, because we get a lot of feedback from our visitors, is that it is a little getaway from
Yeah.
all of that.
And that's where I think the parallel of like Palatka and St. Augustine, like 20 years ago, it was a getaway, like where it was a quiet beach town.
Right.
And Palatka, I feel is it's just a quiet river town,
Hmm.
like and that's what historically it was a railroad town, right?
Exactly.
And
Exactly.
citrus,
Yep.
it was a big farming town. And then it kind of, I guess the
The
fires,
freeze and
the freeze
fires,
and
all
fires,
the
yeah,
F things hit
yeah,
us.
yeah, effed it up real bad, and
Yeah.
then
I like that.
yeah, so and now I think out of necessity, it's kind of where locals from St. Augustine, from surrounding counties, can go to and still get that taste of that what their childhood was like, or what, because everyone's like, oh man, this place is so different when I was a kid. It's like, yeah, it's been 30 years. It's gonna
Yeah.
it's gonna change, like,
Things have to change.
yeah. And there's nothing like, people blame me. They're like, you're the reason St. Augustine's the way it is. Like, if I was, I'd be like super wealthy, and
Right.
I'm not, unfortunately, but
We'll look back at this video in 10 years from now
yeah.
and we will blame you.
Yeah, maybe from
Yeah.
your lips to God's ears, who knows? But yeah, so I think like for especially my generation, and those are the people that are going to be opening up businesses and starting a new concept and really taking risks, right?
Right.
I think that Palatka is like prime for them,
Hmm.
especially when you just talked about the housing cost. So on that news article where it says the top 10 cheapest places to live in Florida, they cite the median sale price, which, so the average is always going to be a little bit higher,
Hmm.
but the median sale price was 196,
Hmm.
which, in St. Augustine, you can't touch that really. I
I
mean,
haven't even.
you might be able to find like a one bedroom condo somewhere,
Right.
but for the most part, it's all going to start around 250 north of that.
Yeah.
Where at least a townhome, no garage, you're going to get that at least. But
That's about the average sale prices that you see some of those new developments,
yeah,
250s.
but they're all going to be townhomes for the
Right.
most part. Yeah, I
Right.
mean, if you're getting a single family home, it's pretty much starting like in the new construction. They're giving you rolled vinyl flooring for micro countertops. It's going to be 350. Plus you got a
The
HOA
cookie
payment.
cutters
Yeah,
and all that. Yeah.
exactly, and it's all the same. And whereas here, I mean, especially this is one thing that like I really love. The historic district here is amazing. Like, and very similar to St. Augustine. They have
Yeah.
the same kind of date range of houses,
Right.
but if you just go just south of here, the whole like all the intersections and the brick pavered streets and all that kind of stuff, like it's beautiful, and the
Yeah.
houses that are right here on River Road.
Yeah.
I mean, some of them date. I think some of them date to like the 1800s.
Yes. Yep. That's
And
correct.
some of the floor plans are a little odd, of course, compared to like what we have today. But still, I mean, it's just amazing, really well kept houses,
Right.
and the neighborhood is beautiful.
Absolutely.
So I think it has so like that old Florida charm. It has that, and I don't think you can really get away from that.
Right.
With it being that old railroad town, just like St. Augustine still has an old Florida charm.
Right.
It's just more commercialized, whereas
Yeah.
Palatka kind of has that homegrown type of feel to it.
Right. And I appreciate that about Palaca. And Putnam County. what I'd really like to see, and I do believe it's coming. I know there's some exciting things in the works, and I just hope maybe by the time I post this video that I'll have to like put a little plug update for just one single change that I know is in the pipeline,
Hmm.
that would change that. But um, I would like to see, and the reason that I have traveled to St. Augustine is for something to do.
Hmm.
I do appreciate that, you can go over on a Tuesday night in St. Augustine, much to the local chagrin, and there's something going on.
Yeah.
We have one of my favorite cover bands plays Trade Winds all the time.
Yeah.
New favorite cover band, Blister. They play rock,
Okay.
but they play over there all the time. And yeah, I saw them at Steamboats here in Palaca
Hmm.
during the Blue Crab, and I was so excited. I was like, "Oh, they came here!"
Hmm.
So I want to see that kind of activity happening because you can walk out here and at 9 o'clock, there's probably three spots open downtown, and that to me is something that we need to do better at.
Yeah.
Um, you want to get away from the chaos, sure, but you want to have a little bit of something to do,
Well, I think that's part of the path, right? Like,
right?
because it's going to make downtown Palaca more attractive where people visit, right? In terms of tourism, but also for your locals, right?
Yeah,
So, you know, three of the big things that we talked about before we hopped on the pod here was like the Bass Pro. You said, Bass capital of the world. Bass Pros putting that huge resort down in Welaka.
right, right.
That's going to be a major change.
Yeah, that's going to be interesting to see.
We'll see what happens with it, but I mean, the amount of land they own is larger than Welaka. And I read it before. I think there's one stoplight in Welaka, two sheriffs.
Yes.
So
I don't know
like,
about how many sheriffs, but the stoplight statistic is correct.
yeah. So they don't have much infrastructure. They
Right.
don't have a huge population, but that's also like they do the bass fishing tournament every single year out there,
Yep.
right? So Bass Pro is going to be putting like a 4,500-acre resort out there. Then you also have the First Coast Expressway, which is going to be running north here, connecting I-95 and I-10 through Green Cove Springs.
Yep.
And then you just have like some of the changes here in Palaca, like you said, some of the restaurants moving in here, Azalea Brewing Company,
And they're doing music
yep,
now. So they're beginning that stage of that.
and they're in like this not this the more western part of like downtown Palaca, right?
We
Would you
call it Newtown.
Newtown?
Yeah.
Okay, would you consider that downtown at all or no?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I guess it depends. Yes is the answer, but date wise, some people call that like that's Newtown or the North Historic District, Northern Historic District. But
Yeah.
to me, from the railroad tracks all the way down here is the main
Downtown.
street, yeah,
Yeah.
downtown.
Okay. So like there, Azalea Brewing is like a beautiful location.
Right.
It's something that like even St. Augustine doesn't really have anything that would touch something like Azalea, in my opinion. And then they're also talking about opening up a restaurant in like the old.
Andrea Rod, did you hear that? I just want you to
Yeah.
know.
Right. Yeah. But it's the truth. We don't have a location like that, and it's probably because we don't have the space for it, right?
That's exactly what I was thinking is I don't know where you would have something that spacious.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, we got nothing like it there,
Yeah.
and that's a fact. But then they're also talking about changing the building right next to Azalea into like a little restaurant that's tied
Mhm.
into the brewery there. So like
The
that is
Coca-Cola building at that with the
yeah,
history in it.
yep, the old bottling factory, right? And it's like that's so cool, and
Yeah.
to be able to keep like just like what you guys did with this building here,
Mhm.
to be able to keep that old historic charm, but
Yeah.
really modernize the inside. So you can have air conditioning. It's not blistering hot in there, and
Right.
everything is your modern amenities in here. Like that's they're keeping
But with
the
the beautiful
beautiful brick walls. Like, yeah, I mean this accent wall, it's amazing. So
Yeah.
like if they're able to do something just like they did with Azalea over there at the Coke bottle building, which is literally connected to
Yeah.
Azalea,
Yep.
I mean that could be a really cool restaurant,
Oh, for sure.
and that I think just like the wall, and these are all supplementary. I'd say to like I think Azalea is probably the top in that entertainment, that restaurant type of thing, moving
Mhm.
into Palaca. But like having a Wawa and a Longhorn, like that's a sign of the times changing, you
Exactly.
know,
Yeah.
and having like those locations just make it easy. And they're doing it for a reason. There's not like they're just like, yeah, just throw one there,
Yeah.
like there's yeah,
Uh.
exactly, yeah, let's just drop a pin, and we don't have a Longhorn there. It looks like they could use one.
Right.
There's a reason, and I think everything that we just outlined is why I think Palatka is really on the precipice of what it could be,
Hmm.
right? And what I mean, just me asking you personally,
Yeah.
because you're not a realtor, you can talk about this all day. What are your negatives to Palatka? You know, minus the entertainment aspect.
Um, I think there are exceptions to this, but the school system, and I personally don't love the fact that we've kind of consolidated the schools, K through sixth and seventh to high school.
Hmm.
And I don't know what it's like in other counties. Putnam County is
Yeah.
my home. I won't. I don't necessarily look into that, but I think that we could do a better job in the education system. Though our graduation rate is much better than it's been historically.
Hmm.
Our schools aren't rated so fantastically. Now Kelly Smith Elementary is a much higher rated school. So, and we have Penile, which a lot of fantastic people have worked out there and come out of there. Um, I think, I mean, the entertainment really is something that is top for me when I think about what is important to a community member, the health and wellness, and that includes mental health
Hmm.
and things to do, and then some of the the roads. Particularly, and we're working on it. I know we are.
Yeah.
So don't anybody come for me, but I know every local here will tell you, for your main thoroughfare where you're trying to highlight the main street here and where a lot of people navigate. I mean, 17 is great, but we've got a lot of business and housing on this side. To have to still be struggling with the road infrastructure is,
I actually just saw something on that
ugh,
too. I think with 17, they're rerouting all the trucks now because that was like the biggest thing, like the semi trucks at least. Like
yeah.
they're not supposed to go through a certain part of it, if I remember correctly.
You get quiet enough, even with these brakes, you can hear the trucks air braking
Yeah,
out there.
I don't doubt it. Yeah.
Yes. Mm.
Well, and you mentioned the schools too, and this is a problem in St. Johns County that I think is benefiting Putnam, or it could potentially benefit it. St. Johns County, the cost of housing is expensive.
Mm.
Your average teacher starts off making $55,000 a year. You know, if the average sale price in St. Johns County is like 540,000,
That math doesn't math.
the math doesn't math there, right? And then it was like 2 years ago, I think, the first time in 40 years or something like that, the teachers union just said like, hey, we don't want the raise because it's not enough.
Right.
So they fought and went back and forth with the superintendent to try and get a better raise. And I guess they got a raise more than they wanted, but like when I read it, I was like, this doesn't make a
The math
dent.
still didn't
Yeah, it
math.
doesn't.
Yeah.
Yeah, the math still isn't math there. And with the growth of St. Johns County, now you're having overcrowding in a lot of the northern part of St. Johns County because that's where a lot of the development's happening. And the teachers are now becoming overwhelmed, and because of the cost of living and like how they go to work, they're more stressed.
Kids.
Yeah, dealing with kids in general.
That's
Yeah,
overwhelming in itself.
yeah. So they're leaving. They're leaving positions in
Bring
St.
them
Johns
here
County,
because we need teachers.
and they're going to surrounding counties because, and this is the funniest thing, we were like the number one school district for however many years, but we don't pay our teachers the same as every other surrounding county pays more. That doesn't make sense. Math doesn't math again.
Yeah.
So Putnam County could be a huge benefit to that, right? They come here, they're like, oh,
Bring your teachers. Bring
yeah,
your knowledge. Come to us.
yeah, exactly. Just bring them over here, and
Yeah.
their cost, their median sale price 200,000, 250, compared to 550. They can afford to live here, and then they can also go to school and improve things and be a part of something. So I
Yeah.
think that just by that problem in St. Johns County, you should see some benefit here.
Well,
Just a guesstimate. I
I
don't know. Yeah.
appreciate you
Yeah.
and all that St. John's County is doing for us.
Yeah. Hey, no problem.
No,
Yeah.
I do appreciate the ability to especially with us being neighboring, you're all connected and we do impact one another and what we
Mhm.
have going on. And we're not saying, I think it's unreasonable to say that I'm never going to leave my community
Mhm.
for my needs. Though, I mean, that would be cool in a utopian world that you never have to go outside of your community for stuff. But I think that going out and being exposed to something like, no matter how hard we try, we don't have a beach.
Mhm.
It just is
Yeah.
what it is. So there are some things that you want to go patron and appreciate and still be able to come home and have those amenities. But I do think having this kind of dialogue about, well, what is it that you appreciate
Yep.
about your community? You've shared that uh, not really being respected as a local there, and all the tourism and traffic and cost of living are all things that can be negative. But clearly, you find pride in living where you're at.
For sure.
Otherwise, you would have packed up and come to Placa.
Yeah, I love St. Augustine, and I think the big thing for me is like I bought a house in West Augustine. I can walk downtown, so it's
Right,
like I'm not affected by the traffic really, you
right,
know. And it's
right,
like, yeah, is there traffic on King Street in downtown St. Augustine for sure? But I know all the back roads get around it, so
exactly,
it doesn't bother me at all, you know. And
right,
like I know when school gets, that's the other thing is just school getting out, right?
yeah.
Is a big hinge point because like a lot of the schools are on major roads,
I
so
was
it's
gonna
like
say I've been stopped many a times at the underpass by schools in and out.
yeah, and it's you know what that's what it is. You know, the kids got to go to school. They're not going to
Right.
change that, but um, you know, a lot of I love St. Augustine, and as I grew up, like I was given a lot by the people here in St. Augustine, and
Hmm.
it's a great town. I don't see that changing, but it's just different than when it was,
Yeah.
right? And I think St. Augustine versus there's a lot of parallels you can draw between Palatka and St. Augustine,
Absolutely.
and I
Absolutely.
think like if you are looking for, you know, because you're a stone's throw from you're 40 minutes to St. Augustine, right?
Yeah.
35 if you're driving, like you said, pedal to the metal, and it's all on 207. You can literally take 207 pretty much right to
And I
downtown.
remember when
And
that was, darn near dirt road,
yeah,
going out there. So, but
and you know
much
what?
faster commute now.
I love the drive. You know,
It's
between
not bad.
it's nice. Like I
My
because for
husband will kill me if he hears that because
really.
I always make him drive, but it's not a bad drive.
I mean, maybe you guys might do it. I mean, I do it pretty often because my sister lives here, but it's just it's different for me because like I'm normally driving around St. Johns County. You know, there's a lot
Right.
more development there, and then I go out 207. 207 is very rural, you
Hmm.
know, and it's more country, and it's like okay, it's a little different vibe. Then you go over the bridge, and like it's a little bit of a joke, but like, even in the video I made, like where you go over when you get over the bridge, it starts the Office theme song as you get into
Yep.
Palatka, you know,
Yep.
and there's the paper mill and everything. So I
Exactly.
was like, it just gives you that. I love that downtown. I think it's cool, and
Yeah.
it's just a different feel. So, um,
What do you think would make it more attract from an outsider's perspective? I mean, you really are in the I feel like if anybody could give a good perspective, you've seen what's happened in your town. So what do you think Palaca needs to really turn that page that we can do internally?
yeah, I mean, I think it just aligning with what you said, like having if you had like a really nice dinner restaurant down here or
Mhm.
keep some more traffic down here, and then you'd probably and then they'd all feed off each other, right? So if you have a bar, a restaurant, or a venue, something like that, all of those feed off of each other, right? You go to dinner, maybe you'll catch a comedy show, maybe you'll catch some live
Oh, a
music.
comedy show.
Comedy would be
Like a
cool.
well, we do have a um it is a craft beer and vape store, but she does comedy out of there.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
Well,
more.
so like she's trying to do something, right? Whereas, and that I feel like that's the start of it, right? Is
Right.
like so that once you find that there's a space for this, right? And
Right.
it's like well maybe I just open up this on its own. What's that? There's that one venue in Green Cove Springs with the marquee on it.
Oh,
People get like wedding photos done there and everything.
I'm trying to remember. It's right there. Well, if you can't
Yeah,
remember and I can't remember, well, I'll
yeah,
Google it.
yeah, exactly. B roll it over it or something. Yeah,
Exactly.
you know exactly what I'm talking
Inserted
about.
here.
Yeah, exactly. But like if we had something like that, whereas like a little, and that's something that like West Augustine is getting now, from what I hear through the grapevine, is we're getting like a music venue on West Augustine on the west side of US 1. We're gonna get like a little local spot, which is
Oh,
something that gets the local artists engaged, and
which
also
y'all have a ton of.
yeah, for sure. So like, and there's no shortage of that here, right?
No.
It's just they don't have a space,
Right.
right? It's just that's what I think would be, like you said, more things to do. But I also think that we need to highlight that there is a lot to do here if you're outdoorsy, right? Like if you want to go fishing, you want to go boating, you want to do like all that in the St. Johns River. Now you can go out to the ocean if you want to. You're gonna make a day out of it, right?
Right.
You're gonna you're gonna have a long drive ahead of you, but
Especially the drive back.
yeah, yeah, that's the
That's
worst too.
always the worst.
Yeah, we're like, oh gosh, yeah. But aside from that, like Central Florida and the springs and all that kind of stuff,
Yeah.
like you know,
We got a
between
spring here
yeah,
in Palaca or in Putnam County.
yeah, Silver Glen, right?
That we have the mud springs.
But okay,
So Dunn's Creek Springs out there. Now Silver Glen, is that I think that's further out. You know what? I was actually looking at springs that were in Putnam County just the other day.
mhm.
And I think it's just the Dunn's Creek Spring. I we're gonna find out. And
Yeah.
that's a statement itself, though. I really have to say that I've lived here my entire life, and I feel like there are places that I'm just discovering. Because Putnam
Yeah.
County's got a big footprint,
Yeah.
with all of the agriculture and national parks and whatever.
Yeah, and I think that's something is like if you're outdoorsy, I mean, well, you have the state forest here,
Hmm.
right, in Putnam County, Ravine Garden State Park.
Yeah,
You have that. Some of the springs that we mentioned, like
rivers, creeks.
rivers, creeks. Yeah, so like all your outdoor stuff, where you're
Oh, the bike trail.
fishing, kayaking, the bike trail.
Have you ever
Exactly.
been on that?
I have not. No,
Uh,
I've been on the St. Johns County portion of it,
yeah.
but not here. Yeah.
I meet a lot of guys out of a lot of people from St. Augustine that park like right before 95.
Hmm.
There's a, I know it's got a name and I can't ever remember it, and then
Yeah.
drive over to East Palaca.
Yep.
And they're developing that they're going to connect all of it right now. So they're
It's
working on that.
it's a part of like a larger plan for like like there's like a cycling, I can't remember, a cycling association that has like a larger plan to to make it essentially like you can ride your bike all through Florida.
Florida Blueways and Trails.
Okay, there you go. Yep.
Actually just interviewed the gentleman who has helped develop that and is
Nice.
heads up that piece. And it may be titled something else, but that's what I consider it would be.
Yeah.
That's also when I found out that we connect all the way to California. Just
Yeah.
so you know, I
So
wasn't like walking around with that knowledge in my pocket
I
until
didn't know that. Yeah. So
then.
that's insane. Yeah. But I think that that's also something, especially for, people retiring, and like I have people reach out to me because of the video that I posted about Palaca, um, that they don't want hustle and bustle of St. Augustine. Now, to a lot of people, St. Augustine's not hustle and bustle, right? You know,
Probably the locals,
yeah,
because for
to the
me,
locals
it's
it
like,
is for
ah.
sure. Yeah, for if you're local here, but if you're moving from like New York or New Jersey or California, it's definitely a slower pace of life. But
Huh,
if you're looking for more peace and more elbow room and being more of an outdoorsy person,
right.
like I mean, there's just so much opportunity to do that here in
Yeah.
Putnam County, which I think is like the thing that they they should hang their hat on, and same thing with me is like I didn't know Ginny Springs existed till I was like 25, and I'd lived here for a long time, and I was like, this is a thing in Florida where they have like these crystal clear waters, and
Right.
like people just go out and drink and hang out in the water and have a good time. I'm like, this is a thing.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
you just learn that kind of stuff,
Sure.
and your proximity here to St. Augustine, to Jacksonville, to Tampa, to Orlando,
To Gainesville.
yeah, to Gainesville,
I
yeah, exactly,
consider us like a wheel hub, and everything else are just spokes from that wheel.
yeah,
And so it really does make it very convenient. And then to highlight something, if you're interested in maybe not such a slower pace at things, maybe you do like the hustle and bustle, but you want to take it down a notch.
hmm,
I think St. Augustine would be a good option,
oh for sure,
where you could, if you want to go outdoors, you can come visit us, but you could stay in that kind of high energy. Though I've never been to New York or New Jersey,
yeah,
but I have heard it enough that I feel like um, probably would be too intense for somebody who hasn't, moving there,
yeah.
just
It's definitely a different.
overstimulation probably.
It's a different environment for sure. I mean, I would say people here on 95 drive crazier than people there on 95, which, maybe 10 years ago I wouldn't have said that.
Yeah.
But I mean, people on 95 drive
Florida
95.
drivers are
Yeah,
nuts no matter
they're-
what part of Florida you're in.
exactly. So it's like they think it's the 95 is the speed limit, and
Yeah.
so it's definitely different. What I tell people is like, all right, so if you're looking at like a car and you think of a 5 speed, you know, Jacksonville's fifth gear. Jacksonville Beach, that's fifth gear.
Right.
Maybe Center City, Jacksonville is probably fourth gear, right? Even though you wouldn't expect that. You go to St. Augustine, it's probably third gear.
Hmm.
You go to Palm Coast, Flagler Beach is probably second gear.
Right.
I would say Palatka is probably one or two.
Yeah.
You're right in the middle there. Where it's like it's not a super fast pace of life, but
Right.
it is. They've got some things going on here, and
Yeah.
especially if you're looking to start a business, I feel like this location is just in the path of growth. You know,
Absolutely. And I think that it really is, to your point, that the beginning stages of it. And I know that there are going to be challenges, and I've talked to people who have felt that challenge in business growth of, yeah, I just feel like things are so much slower than wherever they were comparing to, if they've already had an existing business, if they're just starting. It has been difficult. You asked me some of the challenges here. It has been difficult for some businesses, but I do believe with the growth on the horizon and those changes, and like you said, Wawa wasn't just a spitball on the
Yeah.
map. I don't know why I spitball. It was
Yeah.
weird. But whatever. I
Yeah.
like the dart better, but
Yeah.
leave that there.
Yeah.
But it wasn't just a decision. Somebody was like, I want to put something somewhere. This looks good.
Yeah.
There was forethought in that and planning in that with people who were way smarter than me. So I think if you do want to come in and start something and be at the beginning of something new, and an opportunity to enjoy the slower pace of life, but still bring, um, have something to do and be part of that change that, really Putnam County does have a lot going on and with a bright future ahead.
I agree. And I think I don't know how much you talk about it on your podcast, but I mean, can you just tell me and kind of elaborate all the stuff that you guys are involved in, like some of the like plans and projects that you have, like not only what you've done with this building. Can you
Sure.
elaborate more?
Oh, okay. So
Yeah.
we had a previous conversation. Charlie Douglas purchased Bass Capital Radio. He is a homegrown Putnam County resident, and he just really, I'd say not just him, but there are a lot of people in his in our class, and locals of that age group that are looking to bring programming downtown and music, not just on the weekends, but morning, noon, and night activities, bringing the arts program. So I
Hmm.
think while one person could be part of the forward movement and inspire others, I really do think that there are many of them, us together, trying to bring that, bringing other music acts here, trying to give a space for the musicians to perform, for the arts to be a part. I've seen a lot more 5Ks, events in the outdoors.
Hmm.
The Blueways and Trails that I was just sharing with you are looking at doing road River to Roadway. Craig might kill me for not knowing that because we just talked about it.
Yeah.
But essentially doing a river to trail.
Watch the last podcast.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, go plug that.
Yeah.
But to connect the rivers and trails where you can all the way around.
Yeah.
So I think there's not just one person, but a lot of people working to take something that we already have here and expand upon it. We already have the music talent. We already have the arts. We have the Flow Arts School, the arts out here.
Hmm.
It's a where better to find artists than in an art school,
Yeah.
and utilizing our natural resources to do that. So you can always stay tuned with Bass Capital Radio podcast. We're always trying to cover the development in Putnam County, and that really is what this podcast is about.
Hmm.
We talked about how does this look. I just want to be the mouthpiece for all the growth and changes, and I do want to talk about the topics,
Yeah.
just like you do. There are hard topics that if we don't discuss it,
Yeah.
then A, we can't change it.
Hmm.
And B, people are going to come here and they'll be like, well, I didn't know any of this. Well, now here's a platform that you can find out the difficult topics, but I'm going to also celebrate the victories. Palaca sometimes gets a really bad rap. Putnam County very much gets a bad rap, but there are bad things that happen everywhere.
For
But
sure.
if we're talking about the development, the growth, talking to community members, not even our community members, but community members who visit here, I think that it will give the opportunity to see what a gem really Putnam County is.
Yeah.
And much like you're doing for St. Augustine.
Yeah, and I think it just people just need to give it a chance. I think, and everyone that my buddy that moved here, and he pretty much Jacksonville and St. Augustine. That's where he grew up. And he went to Pedro and St. Augustine High School. Um, all of his friends are there. Him and his wife, and he's got 2 kids now, a third on the way.
Hmm.
They love living out here in Palaca.
Yeah.
It's just a different pace of lifestyle, and they like they talk about an opportunity to move to Jacksonville, and they're like, no, good, pass
Yeah.
on that,
Yeah.
And it's just I think there's a lot of things that it's going to change, right?
Right.
But having those conversations, bringing it up to people, will get more people involved and make more people aware of
Mhm.
what the trajectory is, right?
Right.
Like if you didn't know that Weelaka has this Bass Pro thing going on, if the First Coast Expressway was coming in, if there's all these problems in St. Johns County that are kind of positively affecting Putnam
Mhm.
County, maybe you wouldn't think about buying a place here, maybe
Right.
opening a business here, but adding all those elements to it, it's like,
Yeah.
this might seem like a good idea.
and
So
and you're going to be talking to the people who, and I'm not just trying to encourage people to move to Putnam County, though, welcome, we have land, we have room, come on
yeah,
in. But I also am talking to the people who are here, and I want to, if you get it, if you want that faster pace of life, you know, give Thomas a call.
yeah,
See what he's got to offer. He
yeah,
clearly has the 411. Check out his channel, which I'll link below. Make sure everybody knows how to connect with you.
appreciate
You've
that.
got an Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, a lot of good things cooking in a podcast. Am I correct?
Yeah, so the podcast is part of the YouTube channel, but
Same.
yeah, the same. You'll find it on the same platform, but actually have a couple good interviews coming up with that. I just interviewed Greg Burke, who is trying to introduce a new type of housing concept called the missing middle. So I have that podcast coming out pretty soon. But essentially, what it's saying is
I'll
like, hey,
set a little bell reminder.
yeah,
You can do
yeah,
that.
make sure you do that, yeah, and do that for this podcast as well.
Well, thank you.
But yeah, so some exciting things coming about, and I don't know. We've talked about maybe interviewing some county commissioners who are running. I might do that. I'm not sure yet. I'm kind of on the fence, but yeah, both.
That's a hard topic. Politics is always that area, but you also want
Yeah,
to know what's happening in a place you might want to
for sure.
live or.
Well, and to plug my buddy, same thing. He's getting his real estate license. He's going to be joining my team. He's going to be doing the same thing.
Okay.
Essentially the information that I'm giving out in St. Augustine, I'm going to have him. I'm going to essentially teach him what I do,
Mhm.
kind of bring him under my wing in terms of the real estate side of it, and he's going to be covering Putnam County, Palatka. That'll be his wing of the business essentially.
Awesome.
So really excited to get him on board. But yeah, so that'll be coming in the future.
Very cool. Well, I again love what you do. Your channel is a little over 2 years old.
Yeah,
All I know is 2Y. That's all YouTube likes to tell me.
yeah,
Is that almost three? Is it just two? I don't know.
yeah. I think it's a little over 2 years old. It's all the days run together, and
I
yeah,
feel that.
tons of videos and everything. But yeah, it's just a resource. So living in St. Augustine's the channel. Probably have a living in Palatka
hmm
channel coming out, and then maybe we'll have you on that.
I'd
So that
love
you
it.
could
I'd
talk
love
about
it.
it. Yeah,
Yeah, I think it's great. And again, I appreciate you taking your time to come on and to give an honest perspective of Palaka and your experience here. So if you have any questions, we'll be sure to link everything below on how you get a hold of Thomas. And as always, you know how to reach me. Just to hit that like, subscribe. We look forward to seeing you guys on the next podcast. Thanks so much.
yeah. Thank you.